Have you ever visited a country where ordinary daily routines seem almost like carefully rehearsed performances? Britain has that effect on many visitors, while the rest of the world has embraced faster lifestyles and increasingly casual behavior. Many British people still hold on to customs that have quietly survived for generations. They don't necessarily think about these habits, they simply live them. Whether it's the way they greet strangers, organize public spaces, or even enjoy a simple afternoon. These traditions continue to shape everyday life in ways that often leave outsiders fascinated. And as you'll discover throughout this video, some of these customs have stories stretching back hundreds of years, while others reveal something much deeper about the British character than most people ever realize. One of the first things that surprises foreigners is the remarkable respect for personal space and public order. In Britain, standing in line isn't simply waiting your turn, it's almost a national institution. Queues appear everywhere, from bus stops and supermarkets to pubs and sporting events, and breaking the queue is considered one of the quickest ways to earn disapproving looks from everyone around you. What's remarkable is that there rarely needs to be someone enforcing the rules. People naturally understand where the line begins and ends, trusting that everyone else will respect the same invisible agreement. This shared sense of fairness reflects a culture that often values patience, politeness, and consideration over confrontation, making even crowded places feel surprisingly organized. Then, there's the famous British love of tea, a habit so deeply rooted that it goes far beyond simply enjoying a hot drink. Tea acts as a solution for almost every situation imaginable. Celebrating good news? Put the kettle on. Feeling stressed? Time for tea. Someone unexpectedly visits? The first question is usually whether they'd like a cup. Even during moments of national uncertainty or personal difficulty, making tea has become a comforting ritual that brings a sense of normality. To many outsiders, it may seem like a stereotype, but for millions of people across Britain, it's a daily tradition that quietly reinforces hospitality, routine, and emotional comfort in ways that few other customs can match. Britain is filled with reminders that the past never completely disappears. While skyscrapers rise above London and technology transforms everyday life, centuries-old traditions continue to exist alongside modern society with surprising ease. In many towns and villages, annual ceremonies are still performed exactly as they were hundreds of years ago, complete with historical costumes, ancient rituals, and customs that have outlived kings, queens, wars, and revolutions. What makes Britain unique isn't simply that these traditions survive. It's that ordinary people continue participating in them as if they naturally belong in the present. Rather than being preserved only for tourists, many of these events remain genuine expressions of local identity passed from one generation to the next. One of the most remarkable examples can be seen in the enduring importance of the monarchy and its elaborate ceremonial traditions. Events like the changing of the guard, royal celebrations, and centuries-old state ceremonies continue to attract enormous attention, not only from visitors, but from British citizens themselves. Even people with different opinions about the monarchy often acknowledge the historical significance of these rituals. Every carefully choreographed movement, every uniform, every piece of music connects today's Britain with traditions established hundreds of years ago. In a rapidly changing world, these ceremonies offer a visible reminder that history remains an active part of national life, rather than something confined to museums. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect is how naturally these old customs blend into modern British society. A person might spend the morning working in one of the world's leading financial centers, order groceries through a smartphone app, and later attend a local festival whose origins date back to medieval England. This coexistence between innovation and tradition creates a cultural atmosphere unlike almost anywhere else in the world. As we continue, you'll discover that some of the most surprising British customs aren't connected to grand ceremonies at all, but instead exist quietly within everyday conversations, social interactions, and unspoken rules that millions of people follow without ever realizing how unusual they appear to the rest of the world. If you've ever spent time in Britain, you've probably noticed that there are countless unwritten rules everyone seems to understand without anyone ever explaining them. They aren't taught in schools, printed in guidebooks, or enforced by law. Yet breaking one can instantly make you stand out as an outsider. These invisible social codes are part of what makes British society so distinctive. They're subtle, sometimes even humorous, but they help create an atmosphere where people can share public spaces with remarkably little conflict. To visitors, these behaviors often seem confusing, but to most Britons, they're simply second nature, learned gradually from childhood through observation rather than instruction. Perhaps no habit illustrates this better than the British tendency to apologize, even when they haven't done anything wrong. It's common to hear someone say sorry after another person bumps into them, or even while politely trying to squeeze past someone in a supermarket aisle. The word has become less of an admission of guilt and more of a social lubricant, helping to keep everyday interactions smooth and friendly. Alongside this comes another classic British habit, avoiding direct confrontation whenever possible. Instead of openly criticizing someone, many people prefer subtle hints, understatement, or carefully chosen phrases that soften the message. For outsiders, this indirect communication can be difficult to interpret, but within British culture, it's often seen as a sign of respect and good manners rather than dishonesty. Another fascinating rule involves conversation itself. Discussing the weather isn't simply making small talk, it's one of Britain's greatest social traditions. A brief comment about the rain, sunshine, wind, or unusually warm afternoon can effortlessly start conversations between complete strangers. It provides safe, neutral ground where people can interact without invading each other's privacy. This ability to transform something as ordinary as the weather into a universal social language says a great deal about British culture. It reflects a society that values politeness, modesty, and gradual familiarity over immediate personal openness. And while these customs may seem charming, the traditions we're about to explore next often leave tourists wondering whether they've accidentally stepped into another century. Every year, millions of visitors arrive in Britain expecting to see famous landmarks, historic castles, and royal palaces. What many don't expect is to encounter customs that seem almost frozen in time. Some of these traditions are so deeply woven into local communities that they continue with little regard for how unusual they appear to outsiders. Whether it's village festivals dating back hundreds of years, ceremonial parades filled with elaborate uniforms, or quirky local competitions that have survived generation after generation, these events reveal a side of Britain that can't be understood simply by visiting its biggest cities. They remind people that beneath the modern image of the country lies a remarkable commitment to preserving local identity. Take the British pub, for example. To many tourists, it's simply a place to enjoy a drink after sightseeing. But for locals, the traditional pub has long served as something much more important. It's a community gathering place where neighbors meet, friendships are maintained, sports are watched together, and local news spreads naturally through conversation. Many pubs are older than entire countries, operating inside buildings that have welcomed customers for centuries. Their architecture, traditions, and atmosphere tell stories that no history book could fully capture. Even today, despite changing lifestyles and modern entertainment, countless communities still consider their local pub an essential part of everyday life, rather than merely a business. Another custom that often surprises visitors is Britain's enduring affection for seasonal celebrations that combine history, folklore, and community spirit. Bonfire night, village fetes, Christmas markets, remembrance ceremonies, and countless regional festivals continue to attract families year after year. Many of these traditions have evolved over centuries, adapting to modern society while preserving their original purpose of bringing communities together. They demonstrate that, despite globalization and rapidly changing technology, many British people still believe that shared experiences and historical traditions strengthen their sense of belonging. And that raises perhaps the biggest question of all: why have these customs endured when so many others around the world have quietly disappeared? When you look closely, it becomes clear that these traditions have survived for one simple reason. They continue to give people a sense of identity in a world that changes faster every year. Technology has transformed the way Britons work, communicate, and travel, but many of the customs we've explored remain untouched because they represent something far more valuable than convenience. Waiting patiently in a queue, offering someone a cup of tea, gathering at the local pub, or taking part in centuries-old celebrations are all small reminders that not everything has to change. These habits connect grandparents with grandchildren, neighbors with strangers, and the present with a history that stretches back for centuries. In a time when many cultures worry about losing their traditions, Britain has managed to preserve countless everyday rituals without making them feel like museum pieces. Instead, they remain a natural part of ordinary life, quietly shaping the country's unique character. Of course, Britain isn't frozen in the past. Its cities are among the most diverse and innovative in the world, welcoming new cultures, technologies, and ideas every single day. Yet, perhaps that's exactly why these traditions have become even more meaningful. As society evolves, familiar customs provide a sense of stability and continuity. They remind people where they came from, even as they embrace where they're going. This balance between progress and preservation is one of the country's greatest strengths. Visitors often arrive expecting to discover famous landmarks like Big Ben or Buckingham Palace, but they leave remembering something much more personal: the kindness of a stranger who apologized for no reason, the comforting invitation to share a cup of tea, the perfectly organized queue outside a bakery, or the lively conversations inside a centuries-old pub. These ordinary moments often reveal more about Britain than any monument ever could. So, the next time you find yourself walking through a British town or city, pay attention to the little things. Watch how people interact, notice the quiet respect for tradition, and observe the customs that continue almost unnoticed by those who practice them every day. You may discover that Britain's greatest treasures aren't locked inside castles or displayed behind glass in museums. They're found in everyday habits that have survived wars, industrial revolutions, globalization, and the digital age. These simple traditions continue to tell the story of a nation that values courtesy, community, and history in ways that few other places still do. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson of all. Sometimes the smallest customs are the ones that preserve a country's soul. If you enjoyed discovering these uniquely British traditions, let us know which one surprised you the most. And who knows, there may be even more fascinating customs waiting to be explored in the next journey.